Welcome everyone, and I hope all of you are keeping safe. So just a quick introduction about myself. I have been in the industry for about 27 years. I have lived in India and UK, but I have worked across multiple countries with customers and suppliers across Europe, UK, Japan, China, India, and the USA. So these are the main countries where I've worked in multiple industries. I've worked in uh, IT outsourcing and BPO, which has been most of the years I've been engaged, but I've also worked in consumer durables, industrial products, agricultural machines, and so on. I'm based in UK, but I spend a lot of time in India, and I also have presence in Indore. So I've been engaged with some companies in Indore in the past. I happen to belong to Gwalior, so that's kind of my background and the MP connection. So quickly, I am going on to slide 3. I don't know if you're able to see the slide 3. What we are going through right now with this COVID-19 situation, it's really a once in a century pandemic, and it's really a major crisis. And these events are once in a century kind of events. Nobody's prepared or planned for these kind of events because they tend to happen so rarely, and one cannot really would have planned for this kind of eventuality. But when a crisis situation happens, I think the key thing which is required by the uh, business leaders, and I'm now moving on to slide number 4, makes all the difference to a business, to an organization, to a country. The future of the organization or the business would be determined by what the business leaders do at such a crisis situation. So the resources that the companies have and whatever they have does matter, but what matters more is what the business leaders do. And at this point of time, what we strongly recommend, having learned from previous experiences of crisis management and the companies who have overcome deep crises, is that the leader needs to take charge, and he needs to take charge fully. By that I mean that the leader needs to be in the front. He needs to be visible. He needs to set direction. He needs to figure out what needs to be done, why it needs to be done, and uh, invest in empowering his people on managing the how. So he does not need to micromanage, but he does need to empower his people and set the direction and focus everybody's energy in that direction. He also needs to build trust, because at this crisis point, I think what is critical is that business leaders take the lead and build the trust first with their employees, customers, suppliers, and partners. Because if trust gets broken down, then no other thing or no strategy, no focus would work. So I'll just hand over to Rajesh for going to the next slide.
Yeah, yes, Subhash very rightly said. I think the trust is right now the focus of, and it's centered to any business working. This is a kind of situation which basically we all used to talk about VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguity. But I think this is kind of pandemic, which is the extreme of uncertainty. It throws so much of uncertainties that all of us are finding this situation very challenging. Now, what we should do in this challenging time, because we do not know when the lockdown is going to be over, whether it's going to be over on 14th or other states would basically go for further extension. So the best and most important part is that fortunately we are all now well connected through this IT enablement. Every organization, and this is what we have done in our organization as well, and in our group as well, is actually is to create a crisis center. Because with so much of uncertainty, we should be very sure that actually whatever information that we get or whatever information is flowing in, because there are a lot of information which is flowing from center, there's a lot of information which is flowing from the state government. So we should be very, very much updated on the information which is available to us. So a crisis center has to be set up within the organization. It may be a team of people from a different functionality, different leaders can come together, and they should basically, we should have a real-time information flow, because in any organization there are three things which works out. One is information, other is material, and the third is money. So today the first important thing is information. When the lockdown is going to be over, what all is there in store for us, what all we can do, are we able to ship our material out actually, how we are going to do our collections, what is going to be the mobility which is going to be available. So once this war center or is able to figure out this based on the real-time information, there is a lot of work that one can do on a material flow and money flow. Now, how we should go about it? One is that after we have set up a war center, we basically look at a planning part. Planning is the most important part actually. And with planning, all of us should be on the same page. That means all of us should be aligned. So with the uncertainty, there is nothing so-called long-term today, but we have to look at short-term, medium-term, and medium to medium-term. That means we should be tactical in our approach, tactical in a sense that how we are going to bounce back the moment the lockdown is going to be over. And what kind of availability we would have in terms of manpower, in terms of skill, in terms of mobility, in terms of supply chain, in terms of freight movements. So there are a number of things that we need to address tactically. What would happen to our material inventories that is available with us. So there are a lot of work that we have to do around tactical part of it. But when we are doing tactical part, I think we should not forget about the strategic part also, which is basically from a short term to medium term. And we should also allocate our resources and thinking process from a short term, which is going to be bouncing back. What immediately we need to do, we need to ship out whatever is FG which is available. We should collect whatever money is outstanding. So a lot of planning has to be done actually. And then we should create a scenario. We have to create a scenario first with a base case. Base case is when the lockdown is going to be over. Say, for example, from 14th, is it going to get extended to 21st or 30th? Somebody can work on 21st or somebody can work on 30th as a base case. Then what can be the worst case scenario? There's another case that one can take. Third case can be best case scenario where we can be optimistic that limited mobility or limited shift working or limited manufacturing activity or service activity would be available, say, from 14th. So we can work on all the three cases whereby we do a scenario planning. And in this 3 year scenario planning, there are going to be a lot of challenges and a lot of money part that we need to work on. I think I'll ask Mr. Subhash to take it to the next slide.
So
hello?
Yeah, you can hear me, right? So
yeah, please.
Yeah, so just coming to the immediate challenges. What are the immediate challenges for the businesses right now? And I think the most immediate challenge for the business is how do you manage the situation? When suddenly out of blue there is a lockdown and there are the new regulations which have come in force, which which are driven by the governments across the world. So first thing I think you need to focus is on your workforce, issues around their well-being, your customers, your supply chain, and probably the most important thing is managing cash. Because what's happened is, as the business has come to a standstill, cash flow of every company, or most of the companies, is affected badly, because suddenly demand for most of the products, except for the essential goods, has significantly gone down. Not only the demand has gone down, but the supply chain has been broken. And the manufacturing and other industries are dependent on, or which companies are dependent on their demand, starting with the consumer, has suddenly dried up. And the cash management would determine whether a business is able to survive going forward, or whether it will struggle in this difficult time. And as Rajesh was saying, we really don't know how long this duration of or how long this effect is going to be. It could last a few weeks. In best case scenario, it could last a couple of months, in 2 or 3 months, by seeing the experience of South Korea and China and Japan, or it could have a much longer effect, seeing the experience of Europe, and also now what we are seeing in Singapore, where there is a second wave of infection starting to happen. So cash management, I think, is the key thing for the businesses, and obviously they need to have a very robust planning mechanism, which needs to be done in real time. Because what's happening is, even in India, as you see, it's an evolving situation. So the lockdown may change slightly. There might be relaxation in some areas, or it may continue. We really kind of are coming to know in real time. So nobody knows for sure what will happen in 2 weeks' time. So we have to follow it very, very closely, and the business need to take actions accordingly. So I'm moving on to the next slide, which is slide number 7. And I'm just detailing a bit more on what the businesses need to do in each of these 3-4 categories, starting with employees. And I think the first and foremost role of a business leader is to ensure the well-being of their workforce. And second is to ensure that there is the workforce, if required, can continue to work from wherever they are, which is currently from their homes. And the old ways of working obviously will not work when people start working from home. So the new team structure, smaller teams, have to be reconfigured, because you can't have the same structure that works very effectively in an office environment. So that structure needs to be changed to enable people effectively to be able to contribute while they're not able to travel. They're sitting at home. And in some cases, the work may not be required, in which case, I think this is an ideal time to retrain them or train them or look at their development needs. The key thing, how you do that in today's environment, is using technology, just like we are communicating with each other through the WebEx. So you need to have robust tools in terms of video conferencing, audio conferencing, and other online tools which will enable working from your home location. That also then creates a need to ensure that IT systems are well and up and running, and also the security is maintained. Because at this time, if there is sensitive work to be done by employees from their home, then it is very important that the security is given a thought, because the environment of working is suddenly moved from an office environment where everything is filed in the office to work being done from home, which could be exposed whether through online or physically. The other thing I think which is very critical is looking after the customers, because at this point of time, the focus has to be on identifying who is your most important customer and what is important to them, because this is the time when you need to look after your key customers and ensure that they're serviced. So you need to determine it very, very quickly. The same thing you need to do with the supply chain to make sure that your critical components or critical parts or critical products supply chain doesn't get broken. And if it is getting affected, then you need to look at alternative scenario planning. Rajeesh, you want to summarize this in the next slide?
I think very, very, very rightly said, actually. I think the first and foremost focus is our employees. I think the kind of engagement that we should have with our employees, the kind of empathy and compassion that we can build with them, I think this is the first and foremost that we should have, because our team is only what is going to help us to sell through this crisis. So a very, very deep engagement. I think we should connect both formally and informally, looking at well-being of each and every team member of ours. We should get connected with them at a deeper level, because this is the time when we can really get connected, know about them, know about their family. I think this is going to really critically would help each organization. And as you rightly said it, customer, suppliers, and the technology part is are the technology is a key enabler today. I think as going forward, the way we are doing business, it would be totally changed. I think there is going to be less of connects, physical connects and contacts, and it would be more on technology enablement, both on all the stakeholders, whether it's employer, customer, or suppliers. And key customers and key suppliers are, I think, are the areas where we need to really do a proper mapping. We have to get engaged with suppliers because there would be a delay, and I think that that's one part that we should look at it. Similarly, we should work with the customers to really see that we get our cash inflows at the right time, so that there is enough cash kitty available with us. So thanks, Subhash, for elucidating on this partnership perspective. So
I'll just request you to walk through the slide number 8, which is the
yes.
process cash
I think yes, very rightly said. I think what we would face, the biggest challenge today, what really Subhash has been summarizing as the cash. Today, cash is king, and cash has always been king actually. But cash in this scenario is going to basically at this point of time would make or break any organization. So I think we have to look at unlocking any opportunity that comes to us to unlock cash, whether it is in the form of your inventories, it is in form of inventory which you would not be using it for next 6 months, whether it is RM, WIP, FG, liquidating our FG as soon as it is possible for us, or by taking a limited permission from the government, making it reach to the customer and collecting every penny that is possible for us to connect from our debtors. And there is going to be definitely pushback from the customers. But I think with the kind of relationship, you need to identify the customers who can help you at this point of time. And I think that is what one should do. Having said that, I think there is a lot of focus that we need to do for doing at least 3 to 4 weeks, 3 to 4 months of weekly planning. That means almost 13 to 14 weeks of cash planning, which should be monitored on a weekly basis. Cash inflows and cash outflows, I think today is going to be the call of the day. All the leaders should basically focus on their planning of cash outflows and cash inflows, and more on cash inflows, because cash outflows have to be very much controlled. The burning rate, see, all of us, we talk about how fast the cash burn actually, and the burning rate has to be significantly controlled. Depending upon what you think, I think I'm not talking in terms of any layoff. I think the manpower has to be protected. I think whatever needs to be done to protect our team, their livelihood, I think that should be done actually, because this is the time when this is required. What we can definitely look at into it is whatever are the other areas of burning cash, and every line item, every penny of it, in terms of administrative expenses, whether it is in terms of vehicles, in terms of any other facilities that we are looking at, any kind of capex that you have planned it out actually, and inventory and working capital, I already discussed about it. Anything which is not required for next 3 to 6 months should not be kept. Every effort should be done to basically liquidate in the market, and a very good control, and very different ideas can come in actually. I think when you do a brainstorming with your team, I think they themselves would voluntarily come in with very fantastic idea. And there is a lot of companies which have a thought of getting into carpool, dismantling with some kind of services for next 3 to 6 months. So there are many ways by which we can limit your cash burn. So one has to really focus on it when the stakes are down, the lockdown period is there and operations are not happening, and at the other end we need to really pay to our workers as per the government orders. I think this is the best time that we look at, and it would bring us and make us more efficient. Because once we do it, I think when we are going to come out of it and the new way of doing the business, we'll find that we are much more efficient in terms of our cash management. From cash, if you look at it, the processes, I think entire process would change actually. The way we were managing our processes, as rightly said by Subhash ji, the teams formations have to be different. They have to be smaller in size. The CFT perspective have to be much, much better. The end-to-end process mappings have to be significantly in a perspective where your waiting time for anything, because today agility would be the game. How fast, how soon you are able to respond to any of the situation which you are going to encounter. So you have to redefine your processes. You have to realign your processes. The teams, when they are going to be working and from a distance, they have to come on a common page, and a lot of SOPs have to be worked out. A lot of structure and a lot of templates have to be created, and efficiencies have to come in. So there is a lot of thought process which needs to get into the process orientation, and with a very single objective that anything we cannot waste today, and there should not be any waiting in the system. Waiting is something which is going to become and is going to hit us adversely. And we have to also align our processes with a new way of working, like we are doing work from home. And today, I think in the past it was a big challenge when we were talked about working from home. But I think it is going to be a mix of work from home to working from factory, because some limited mobility would be available. So balancing those two, and yet ensuring that all your team members and even the leaders are on the same page, would be a very essential thing. Risk, definitely, there are significant amount of risk that has been thrown. We as leaders always believe that we are very good at risk management, but I think all of also have experience, because the kind of risk that COVID has thrown to us, it was unprecedented. We were not prepared for it. And I think it is a very, very good time now that taking advantage of this, we make our own risk register, and we look at managing those risks actually, and try to see that wherever the risks are on the high side, how we can bring it to the medium and medium to low. And it can be done more with scenario planning and allocation of resources, getting into great process orientation, engaging with different stakeholders. And once we have done that, I think we should also do a stress test, because today already we are all of us are into great stress. I would not say only mental stress, but there is a lot of financial stress which we are all undergoing actually. There is a lot of uncertainty which throws us and a lot of stress to us. So we should really work on what is the order book which is available with us, how the material flow, cash flows, P&L and balance sheet would be, make it under different scenarios and see what is our affordability today. The entire game is not today, see profitability. Today we have to really look at it, our affordability part. So change has to be there from profitability to affordability. And I think what we already discussed on the war room side, that would help you to do that actually. Subhash, you would like to add something?
No, I think you've summarized pretty well. I think the key thing is that the situation, we don't know actually what the situation is going to be, because it is an evolving situation. So monitoring it on a real time, creating a small team within the company of, depending on the company size, 2, 3, 5 people who would monitor the situation so that the risks can be compiled and updated. Because today the risk is that when the lockdown started, the visibility was that lockdown is going to be till 14th of April. Today, as we see, the situation is that most likely it will be extended to 30th April. And that may change as the number of cases change, as the spread of disease either reduces or increases. We don't know. So the key thing for business leaders is that they should set the direction, make decisions, but keep real-time visibility to the external reality which is changing, and there should be dedicated people who do that, because that's something which is critical. Because you can't assume things and make decisions. You need to take the hard facts and data available. And in India, there is slight advantage that there is some precedent in terms of what has happened in Europe and US and what has happened in South Korea and China, which we can all see and learn from. So that knowledge combined with what's happening in real time in the local business, and also what is happening in Indore may be different than what is happening in, say, Delhi. So those things need to be monitored in real time, and those But planning is, I think, of essence. I'll just quickly move on to the next slide, which is slightly moving away from the crisis, because we know everybody is focused on managing the current situation. Somebody was asking a question that manufacturing companies are closed and they need to be in the factory to do the manufacturing. So it can't be done from work from home, and it's totally understandable. And I see a possibility that at some point of time, the governments would start to open up manufacturing sector, maybe in phases. In some of the industries, they are already open, which I see in the UK. So any critical industry which is deemed to be to with food and with well-being, they are open, and they are mandated to be open, whether it is manufacturing or the facilities. So probably as scenario changes, as risk is perceived, that will change again. But at the same time, I think this is a time for companies to reflect what's going to happen post the situation, because we all know that this situation is going to last a few weeks or a few months, but eventually we are all going to come out of it. But when we come out of it, things will improve, but I don't think they will be the same, what they were before this COVID-19 situation. So the market will bounce back, but it will not be same. It will change. A lot of things will change. Customer behavior will change. Risk-taking ability will change, and I see significant opportunities for some of the industries which will grow much faster. I mean, these are the industries which have been growing anyway because of the technology. So technology-led companies, especially telemedicine, online businesses like online learning, e-commerce, health-related businesses, suddenly there is a significant awareness being built around well-being and health, because everybody realizes how important it is in these times. So those industries would flourish. I also see there is going to be some negative impact. Suddenly people realize the risk of being in a polluted environment, being in a crowded environment, even post COVID-19 situation, that may impact some of the industries. And that is the trend. I think it's a global trend. To what extent it happens in India is to be seen, but I would see that it would probably touch some of the industries like restaurants, bars, cinemas, and some of these industries have been growing very fast in India. Probably, if their growth rate may get impacted. The other thing which I see is that globalization, which was being challenged by the changes in government, especially in the last few years, will get further impacted. So there is going to be some industries which will, or countries which have been outsourcing heavily into China and other countries, there would be pressure on them to bring some of the work in country, especially if it is seen critical. So there will be a slow in terms of outsourcing and globalization. There is definitely going to be a big impact on how the future offices are planned and configured. There is a significantly increased amount of work from home, because as people are forced to work from home, they start to learn how to work from home. The companies and people see the benefits of being able to work from home. And a lot of companies who have been encouraging this would further, I think, accelerate. And we will see much more working from home happen in India as well, just like it's been happening in Europe. And in Europe, it will significantly increase. So there is going to be a downward pressure on real estate. There is, out of this very bad situation, we are seeing some positives. And one of the positives which you're seeing is that air is much cleaner, the rivers are cleaner, the pollution is down. And that is going to probably make people think, and the governments think, how they can contain some of these environmental impacts by changing some of the policies. So the governments might want to encourage working from home. There might be incentives for doing that, and there might be other things which will hopefully allow the way people conduct their business or the the way people conduct their social, the way people manage their social behavior. And I see a significant impact on personal hygiene, which will be very, very positive across the world and in India as well. That people, I think, by and large, across the society are becoming very aware of the importance of hygiene. According to one study, there will be a significant drop in spread of flu and other diseases because as people stop greeting in a personal space and probably shake less hands and carry out activities which are significantly different than what they've been used to doing. So we'll see a lot of change in social behavior and personal hygiene as well. So these are the trends. I think it is a time for some of the companies to devote some resources in terms of outlining how their industry or their business is going to be impacted with these future changes. I'm just moving on to the next slide. And leading to that, your business, has to be, I think most of the businesses would need to redefine themselves, reimagine themselves, and they need to reinvent the new ways of doing business. I expect there will be a significant change in competitive environment as well as regulatory environment. The government is already coming out with some of the regulations which were difficult to imagine a few days ago, like social distancing and not being able to come out of their houses. Some of these regulatory environments will come, which will impact how business is conducted. I see a lot of competitive environment will change because a lot of companies most of the companies are getting impacted, but some companies may get impacted in a very big way and may go out of business. The companies that are more flexible and able to adopt to change will be able to thrive because they will suddenly have the opportunity to address the market, which otherwise they would have struggled because established players would get impacted in these markets. So there is, I think, a time for businesses to plan that how this situation is going to, in the long run, impact their industry and their business, and what they should be planning to do when they come out of it. And this would prepare them to address these challenges then. Rajeesh, over to you for the next slide.
Yes, Subhash, I think very rightly said. And first of all, a great boost to our Indian culture is that Namaste is in. From shaking hand, I think as India, we could now export at least one of our, and a symbol of greeting is Namaste. So that's a very, very positive sign. And I'm taking a cue that is fine when things are difficult and stakes are down, but there is a lot of silver lining with any crisis proves. In everything that you do, every threat has got an opportunity, and as business leaders, a lot of business leaders are connected here actually. They all do SWOT analysis and they know that every situation of weakness, all threat gives a opportunity as well actually. So this is the time when I think business leaders really need to work on, they need to reimagine. And where I would say reimagine means it's not a word in itself actually. We have to really go and work it out that whatever goals that we have set for ourselves actually as part of our AOP or business processes, and do we need to revisit them? Are we there in the business that we should be? Is our product portfolio which we are carrying makes sense for us to continue? And what we are doing today actually. And so basically we have to really reimagine the way we are going to be doing business, because the external environment definitely has changed, and internal environment has to change also, because social distancing would be a norm, doing processing, hygiene, and many other factors are going to be coming in, which is going to really have to be reimagined how we are going to operate when and aligning with the external environment and yet be competitive. So there has to be a lot of reimagination which needs to work upon, and the company who sits together and reimagine and recalibrate themselves, I think, as are the organizations which are going to move forward. Now, when we say reimagine, I think there is a lot of work that we need to look at reinventing. Whether it is reinventing our processes, it is reinventing our structure, it is reinventing our learning and development, it is reinventing our capability building. I think there is a lot of reinventing or in our product portfolio, in our addressing the customer requirement, working with suppliers in VAV propositions. So I think there has to be a whole set of transformation which needs to be done. As business leaders, I think we always say that we are a change agent and we are open to change and transformation. But I think business leaders also find it very difficult to recalibrate themselves with the kind of changes which happens in the external environment. So all this means that there has to be a lot of transformation that has to happen now in the business to adapt to this change. I already talked external, internal environment, regularity environment would change. And I think we should work on continuously to see that our realignment happens with the external environment as well, actually. Any thought process of yours?
Yeah, I just to add to Rajesh, what the point you made, and what I expect is that there is going to be significant out of this impact. One of the impact on the business is going to be the significant change in the supply chain as companies move some of the work which is critical back into their country, but the ones which they have concentrated heavily in one country, they may want to manage their risk. And to everybody's mind, in Europe, whoever you talk to, in the US, there is a high level of dependency on China for supply of all products. And that has happened over a period of time because China has been very, very competitive and very attractive destination. But that also exposes a huge risk because when the COVID-19 situation started and China started shutting down, people realized that by concentrating their supply chain in one place, they have exposed themselves to a huge risk. And that has driven the point home. Although the China situation has changed dramatically, but that point has been kind of bothering a lot of industries. And I see that there will be a dramatic shift in supply chain over a number of years. So it won't happen instantly, but more and more companies will look at alternative locations. And that throws an opportunity for India to get into manufacturing space because India has been into manufacturing, but really has been struggling if you compare it to China. And there is a huge opportunity that the China supply chain displacement will throw. There's also a small risk, and the risk is primarily
it's 11:30
on IT and outsourcing companies. That a lot of outsourcing has been very heavily concentrated to India in IT and BPO space and a few locations within India, and that may also change. So there are challenges as well as significant opportunities which will come up post COVID-19 situation. And as we discussed in the last slide, the competitive landscape will also change because a lot of companies in West will go out of business, and especially in certain industries, which we are already seeing in terms of travel, tourism. We are already seeing some companies who did not have robust business model, who had high debt, are holding up. A lot of retail companies are going out of business because physical retail. So we are seeing large chains announcing their closing down some of the large businesses, which we're seeing in the UK and Europe, and that will change dramatically or have impact on companies who are supplying to them or who are affected by them. And the similar sectors will also struggle. So in India, so people who have a lot of physical presence in terms of retail, companies who are into holiday business, companies who are into travel business, are already seeing impact. Moving on to the next slide. Uh, Slide 12. I'll just touch upon uh, what has been the immediate impact on COVID-19 on the GDP forecasts. And just to give you a quick idea, uh, at the end of Q4 in 2019, we were expecting that the world growth would slow down to 2.5%. And now everybody is sure that the world economy is going to degrow. Nobody knows by how much, and that is kind of taking a guess at this point of time. But there is not going to be any growth in this financial year. The data which we see, which is available for Q1, there is significant negative growth in most of the countries. India did see a positive growth in Q1 because I think the lockdown would largely impact Q2 numbers. And in Q2, what we are seeing is a forecast anywhere between, if you look at the BRICS and the G7 countries, the forecast is that quarter-on-quarter growth rate will be negative from -4% to -10-11%, except in case of China, because in China, the degrowth happened significantly by 11% in Q1, and in Q2, a lot of it is expected to recover. So they will probably grow as compared to Q1. And I'm talking about quarter-on-quarter growth. And that then throws the point about impact of this, because if the global economy is not going to grow, it will invariably impact companies who are into export and import business or who are into global business, because they would be severely impacted. And Rajeesh, maybe you want to share or talk about the next slides, number 13 and 14. Yeah.
I think very rightly said. I think we became a very globalized world, and slowly, as you rightly said in your previous slides, that there would be now a move from globalization to localization. I think pandemic like COVID has really making entire global leader to think, and a powerful economy and the most powerful country of America actually today seems to be vulnerable. So under such situation, I think the global trade definitely would be impacted, mainly when every country post-COVID would like to protect their local interest. And even with the WTO being in place, I think there are a number of ways citing this pandemic. There is going to be a major shift from a globalization to a localization. And except first 2 quarters, based on the COVID movement, I think where there is going to be very high dependency on China, because China was the first to suffer and first to recover. So there would be reliance on China for a couple of quarters. But I think there is a lot of thought process at the back of all global leaders that they have to really decentralize their bases from China, and also protect their industry and their employment in turn. So export is one such area that is going to be affected. People to whom we were exporting from India, they would definitely like their contracts to be short closed or renegotiated, or the contracts would be delayed, because there is, as you rightly shown, that G7 economies are going to shrink, and SI has 10% on quarter basis. So there is going to be a significant impact in terms of the demand overseas actually. Also, the payments are most likely to be delayed. There are a lot of requests which are coming to our Indian entrepreneurs and organizations that there is a difficulty in terms of payment being made for the export that has been done. I think, but quickly, I would only urge our Indian friends, our Indian leaders to basically push for an early payment, because payments are definitely going to get delayed. Demand, as we see, is decreasing. So whenever there is a shrinking of demand, there is always going to be a reverse price pressure. And how the supply chain is going to work out today in the short term is very uncertain. We may have a little interest rate dip. We may have some availability in terms of at the reduced prices, but how much it would convert into competitiveness to face the kind of challenges that we need to meet in the international market is a very big question. I already talked about it that localized clusters today would be preferred. If you even look at it today, when we are going to bounce back and after the lockdown, I think the freight element would play a very big part. A freight, one-way freight today, when the economy is fully operational, I think your freight rates normally are based on that. Okay, you have got a to and fro kind of thing. I think going forward, there is going to be a system which is going to come in the shorter perspective where people would like to look at it and in a particular distance of doing a business. So there is going to be a more of a localized cluster which is going to emerge globally. There are going to be localized clusters which are also going to be emerging locally. And as we talked about, I think cash flow is one such element. And I also am getting a lot of questions from our friends who are listening to us that this is going to be one big issue that is going to really decide the survival of every organization. So we should see that any avenue of cash inflow that we can secure today from the exports that we have done, we should definitely do that. Subhash, any point from your end?
I think you've covered most of the things, but the key thing is that since the world economy is going to degrow, and even if India is able to come out of this successfully, the global economy impacts all the economies and Indian economy as well. So in spite of what happens in India, and that is one factor to look at. But given now what we are seeing in Europe and what is now become a fact, that the countries here would struggle big time to restart their economy. And even when they restart, the amount of spend they're doing to manage the situation would mean that we were going to see 2, 3, 4, 5 difficult years. So which will invariably impact the exporters, because for them, these markets are going to be more difficult. The margins are going to be less, and they need to probably take more proactive actions to overcome these challenges as compared to the companies who are domestically focused, because I think the Indian economy is pretty strong. As and when things improve, it will bounce back much faster, but the global economy is not going to bounce back. We can move to the next slide, Rajeesh.
Okay. I think now let us look at imports. There would be subdued price in the international market. I think we've already discussed because of degrowth actually, and it also throws us opportunity, but at the same time there is going to be perspective of availability that we need to really look at it, because logistic and the logistic part would be a very big challenge in terms of movement of material. So while the prices may be low, I think, but we should see that availability part is not missed out. Reliance of China will increase in short term, which I already discussed, and the prices may also escalate of specific commodities which are being exported from China. Maybe, but in the long run, the things are going to balance out actually. There would be opportunity of renegotiation from our end also, I think, for contracts in the international market. But I think good piece of information availability would be a key. So if you can connect with a very good resource in overseas market, who can give you a real good information of how the economy is, how that company is working, and what are the opportunities which are available for renegotiation, so that you also do not lose your customer, I think would be one very, very important factor actually. So I know you should also try and establish a good relationship manager kind of resource in international market, who can give you a real-time information and who can also help you and assist you in terms of renegotiation of any contract actually. Response time, I think now we should not think that anything that we are going to discuss today would be responded on the same day, next day. And it would take its own time and it would be a challenge, and we need to really look at it. And shift from imports to domestic will be a challenge. As supplier, we prefer existing customer when we see if we were basically doing a lot of imports. And if you would like to now create a customer base in India, yes, it is doable, but it would be challenging, because in today's time when the ramping up of the demand would happen, the existing customer supplier relationship would play a pivotal role. So I think if you want to get back to your domestic market, I think you have to look at your efficiencies, you have to look at your price points, you have to look at your offerings actually, which you are going to make it. So this are the changes which are going to happen actually, and I would request Subhash ji to take it forward.
So just Rajesh, yeah, just a few questions. I think we kind of pretty much on the end of our presentation, and I will start taking some of these questions and quickly try and answer to best of my ability. So
Yeah.
there's a question from Harsh, and his question is why we expect so much of structural change will occur in business, especially when there is an expectation that soon we will have clinical trials and vaccine and so on. So just to kind of answer two things. One is we do expect that eventually there are going to be vaccines available. There are a lot of companies already going into the clinical trial phase. But clinical trials have already started in Europe and US and many other countries. But the realistic expectations of the industry expert is that by the time the vaccine hits the market in the volumes that is required to be effective, it is going to take anywhere between 1.5 to 2 years. Normally, it takes 10 to 15 years for a vaccine to come out. The most accelerated phase, it is going to take 1.5 years. And even if it takes a year, that's a lot of time. So, and that is the danger why, and a lot of impact. In fact, a lot of impact has already been done as we speak. Because when you shut down economies like Europe for 3 months, which is a very consumer-driven economy, as compared to India, everything stops because people stop buying, and because the whole business, the whole economy in the West is driven through consumerism. And if the consumer is asked to sit at home, every industry gets affected in a very big way. In India, the effect is there, but it is nowhere near what it is going to affect the Western economies. So to answer your question, most of the effect has already happened, and I don't expect the vaccine to come anywhere in the next 3 to 6 months. So the effect is going to be significant. And the other thing which we don't know, which is still out there, is that even if we are able to control the virus as they have done in South Korea and Japan and China, there could be a phase 2, phase 3, second wave of the virus coming in, which we are already seeing in Japan. You're seeing Tokyo wasn't locked down. Now suddenly you see that Tokyo is locked down. Same thing you're seeing in Singapore, where they were able to resolve the first wave and they were able to control the infections. And suddenly you're seeing the second wave of infection coming in. The next thing which we don't know is the mutation of the virus, because most of these viruses, coronaviruses, are able to mutate. So there could be a different strain. So even if you found a vaccine, you could see a different strain. So what a lot of people are expecting this to become a stable, which will come every year. And hopefully a lot of people will develop immunity, but it will take some time. Rajesh, you want to add to that?
No, I think very fairly said actually. The vaccine is going to take a long time. There is also a possibility, and everybody is watching China, that there should not be any re-emergence of this virus. I think we are not sounding pessimistic in the entire perspective. We are only talking that this pandemic definitely is a crisis which we need and learn how to manage, because there are similar questions which have been posed that, and why not a lot of global experts or the people who understand the situation and have a domain expertise should not come together and help the industries. And I think very rightly said, I think that we are also doing this webinar only to address that issues. That as having gone through the process and having seen this crisis and the way the organizations are working, and what is the best way that we can work on it. So there is another question which is there actually in terms of that cash is going to be is going to be something which is an area of concern. and it may go out of control. And I very rightly said in my deliberation that today every possible planning in terms of cash flow with a weekly monitoring or a daily monitoring needs to be worked out actually. And burnout rate has to be reduced significantly. And we need to see that every element of cash inflows, where it means talking 10 times to your customer or liquidating every penny of your inventory, I think that should be done. And the burning rates should be significantly reduced. Any take from your side, Subhaji?
I think you've covered these points pretty well. One more question I can see, which has come from Sushil Dubey, is on impact of very low oil prices. I mean, there has been low oil prices because of various reasons, and one of the reasons has been the differences between oil-producing countries themselves, and that was an issue. But what has happened after COVID situation is the demand for oil has significantly gone down, and that is driving the price further down, which is very, very good for a country like India, which imports a lot of oil, and the long-term demand, I think, for oil will get impacted, because what this situation has shown and radiated people is that a lot of things can be done without having to necessarily travel. So there has been a big drive in West, which has been to have a neutral carbon footprint and less travel, and that's picked up with primarily with young population, so it's with university students and very young people, but it is not driven that much with the wider, larger corporate people and broader population. And I think this experience will change the mindset of people. So people will become more aware in terms of their travel habits. People will become more aware of their holidaying habit, and which is a very, very large industry in West, and that would drive the demand for oil significantly lower, which will probably ensure that the oil prices continue to be comparatively down than what they have been in the past. So I think we probably covered most of the questions, all the questions now. So.
Yeah, can we go to the next slide, last slide? Now, I think this is, there are a couple of questions that what is the way forward actually, and I think I would like to explain that, and rightly also suggested by a few members who had put in question answers actually, is why not everything should be done by ourselves. I think that essence is time. Today, if we miss on time, I think we may miss the bus. Today is a question of survival, and all of us are thinking that, okay, we have the necessary bandwidth with us, but I think the kind of efforts that are required today is humongous. It is not a small effort that would have our bandwidth to be there actually for every kind of management that we need to do. So there is an option that we do it ourselves. So that's great actually. But then today the room of mistake is very limited actually. If we make mistakes and learn, then I think there is a possibility that we miss the bus. And as rightly suggested by one of the participants, that okay, is there no way that we can look at experts, partners who can definitely fast track? I think I also see that as an opportunity where we should engage experts, partners, so that in the short term we are quickly able to come out of it. There is a limit to our crisis management that we do, and we start soon looking after a midterm rather than a short term actually. So there should be somebody who basically hold us, handhold us for the period of crisis, a group of people or some experts. And once we have seen we are out of it, then we can also look at our long-term sustenance and building up thereafter. So with this, I think we have come to the end of our presentation, Subhash.
Yes, so thank you everyone for being so patient and being able to join it in such a short notice. I am trying to build a comprehensive checklist of things that business should be doing in terms of some of these points which we have put in the slides. More of a comprehensive to-do list in terms of what we should be checking and looking at and doing. And we are happy to share it with business leaders or business owners who may be interested to see that, to have that list, and we can happy to provide them if they put in a request to us at any point of time as a pre bono. So to anybody who would want it. So that with that, I would like to probably close this discussion unless anybody has any more questions.
I think very rightly said by Subhash. I think he's working. We are trying to develop actually a comprehensive list to help our friends in the industry, and which is basically is a kind of checklist which is going to help what all needs to be done when we are going to be facing this crisis, which would definitely support in a way to come out of this crisis and also look at bouncing back. So thanks, Subhash. I think for your exhaustive work, and I think together I think we can provide that to the audience as well. Actually.
Thank you again, everyone.
Thanks. Okay. Should we close down?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Rajesh and Subhash. I think the entire presentation was very comprehensive, and probably you have touched based on each and every topic. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Thanks.
हाँ जी भाई साहब, अरे बढ़िया बढ़िया, हाँ रिकॉर्ड के लिंक आना चाहिए, आई प्रिज्यूम में लिंक मिल जाना चाहिए। मैंने इसको ही दिया था, जगवंत, मीना, ये लोग भी थे पैनलिस्ट, ये भी कर सकते थे। अब इन्होंने किया मालूम नहीं, मैं भी क्या कर रहा हूँ, वो लिंक तो है ही, तो मैं भी क्या करता हूँ इसको